Good morning to all my friends and family, and welcome to this episode of Jim's 5am Club. It's another, I guess, a little bit overcast day, but it's going to fine up and be a glorious spring day. I come to you from this magnificent platform at Circular Quay Station, which overlooks Circular Quay and Sydney Harbour, and we've got there in the distance, presented beautifully, the Opera House and the Harbour Bridge. And today I want to take you on a book summary, a short journey, but I guess it's a controversial journey. It's a tricky journey. It's a topic which is difficult to talk about, but a topic that we all need to talk about. And the book is entitled "Why Does He Do That?" by Lundy Bancroft. And it's a book which is based on physical, verbal abuse that is generally portrayed by males, not only portrayed by males, but from the author's perspective, she will examine this very, very difficult topic and try and explain what causes this behaviour, how to identify this behaviour so that we can help people deal with it. The author kicks off the book with an interesting but powerful observation that you don't respect someone you abuse, and you don't abuse someone you respect. So this book here is about identifying and dealing with abusers within relationships. And the author here suggests and makes a good point here that abusive relationships don't always take the form of physical threats. So being in an abusive relationship isn't just about physical threats, or feeling threatened physically, but it also includes the sense of feeling controlled, devalued, intimidated, and feeling as if you're a victim and not an equal partner within a relationship. And the other point that the author makes is to address from the very, very beginning that abusers are hard to identify initially, because on the surface, all abusers can be very, very charming, can be very, very charismatic, but are masking a terrible, dark trait, dark place for everybody to try and avoid and to steer clear of. Because what the author says here is that with time, with the advantage of time, all abusers sooner or later will reveal their true self, their true ugly self. And the key is to be able to identify the clues that will help people hopefully avoid being with these people. And in order to avoid being with them, according to this author, you first need to recognise them. But sadly, it's a hard trick, it's a hard skill to acquire. It's very, very tricky to be able to disseminate the various behaviours and clues and to identify an abuser before you become trapped and become the abusee. So the first formal point to come out of this book from this author is where the author reminds us that poor education forms the basis of abusive behaviour. So what does poor education mean? Does it mean that people go to a bad school, or Do they come from a bad family? Do they have bad experiences? The author here reminds us that role models are a critical component of poor behaviour, because role models and influences, so listen up here, role models and influences are mainly responsible for people to be abusive and to have abusive triggers. Because when we look back over the life of abusive people, we're taught, we learn, we see, we observe that a boy's education, and we're talking now about male abusers, a boy's education forms from watching adults around them during those important years of their growth and development. Because children absorb everything they see and everything they experience. So the author goes on to say that if a boy sees their mother acting like a servant and being submissive throughout their lives, then this helps generate and creates that boy's worldview in terms of how behaviour is tolerated and how behaviour works within their family environment. So in terms of statistics, the author says that 50% of men who grow up in abusive homes become abusive. And social media and news and all other media can also influence behaviours. Because what happens is men, boys, pick up abusive inclinations and behaviours from others. You know, the music we listen to, the sports we watch tends to glorify the alpha male, and from a very, very young age, children get to start to worship aggression, abusive traits, and the ball is set in motion, so to speak. So what can we do to identify an abuser and to help us understand the process? So the author shows us and teaches us that there are subtle signs that an abuser shows early in a relationship, because abusive behaviour has its symptoms, and they are warning signs, they are signals, and we need to identify them early and nip them in the bud if we can, and leave, extricate ourselves from that circle, from that relationship as early as possible before it gets worse and worse. So the common element that abusers have, and an early warning sign, is that they speak disrespectfully about their ex-partners, they degrade others, and they basically are very negative people. They're negative in every respect. They disrespect leaders in government. They don't have a respect for authority in any way, shape or form. So we need to also be wary of those people who paint themselves as false victims. A lot of people will play the victim card, the race card, a number of other different cards, trying to mask their intentions, but they're the ones who are the actual abuser. So you need to be careful and wary of those who are constantly complaining and using excuse after excuse for them not achieving what they should have achieved in their lives, blaming their parents, blaming their siblings, blaming their teachers, blaming their boss. All of these sorts of things are early warning signs of somebody who may become abusive to you. The abusers are the ones who are the charming ones, the ones with the charisma, who make the big promises when they first meet you. And the reason why they make these big promises is for them to claim you. It's an interesting way of seeing this. They do it in order to claim ownership of you. And once they've got you in their grasp, in their clasp, then it's very, very hard to extricate yourself. So the clues to look out for is when people make false offers of generosity, when it is not called for. You know, buying gifts, offering things that you haven't asked for. The other thing that they do is they make you feel uncomfortable. So I need to get on this train, so I'll continue the book summary whilst I'm on the train. But all of these things are early warning signals, and if you feel uncomfortable and indebted, then you need to look at jumping out as quickly as you can to avoid being drawn further into this vortex of abuse and control. Let me pop on the train here and we'll continue the chit chat. So the third point to come out of this book is that abusers need to sort themselves out, and it's got nothing to do with you, it's got nothing to do with the family or anybody else, and it shouldn't be conditional on anything you do either. An abuser needs to change themselves, and you need to understand that abusive behaviour is learned and inherited. So the other thing the author also mentions is that many abusers promise to change, but few actually do. This is another important point to understand and to realise, that they've basically spent their whole lives making things up and pretending to want to make the change. But the key issue is that they see the problem in others around them and rarely see themselves being the actual source of the problem. So it's until an abuser sees themselves as the issue, the problem, then nothing really concrete is going to get solved or figured out. So there we go. So an abuser, according to the author, needs to take ownership and admit that they are the problem. And they can't impose, as we mentioned before, conditions on others around them. And they need to sort themselves out before they should have permission to once again go into a relationship or to create grief in other people's lives. So the key message from this book is to learn to identify the clues and to steer clear, and to understand that you are not the problem, it's the abuser who has the problem. Thank you very much for joining me on this episode of Jim's 5am Club on this Thursday morning. I look forward to coming to you again from a different location with a different message of empowerment, where we can live, learn and pass it on, where we can be partners in each other's growth and development, and we can incorporate new learnings every day to empower ourselves, to get through the day, get through our lives in this very, very challenging world. Take care everybody, yasas, and we'll chat again. Bye for now.